Austin, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, we're so pumped to be out here and see everything. And we were mentioning prior to hitting record that we had first gotten connected in April, this past April, at the What Good Shall I Do conference at Rome Ranch, and you were a panelist there. So we had the opportunity to hear you speak for the first time, and we were just really moved and inspired by a lot of the content that you were speaking about, especially for us not having a ranching background. So we're just excited to dig into a lot of that with you.
Me too. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It was cool too, because that was really like we had started the show about a month prior to going out to Rome Ranch, and just seeing you alongside of some of those legends like Ray Archuleta, Zach Bush, and really just starting to learn for ourselves what goes into the food system. It was moving, and I think that was kind of like a turning point for us, just being around like Taylor and people who are really like contributing to making the food system better. So, I think we wanted to start off just by reading your guys' mission statement, because it's so powerful. And it talks about what I was just speaking to, like this idea of reconnecting with your food system and understanding what goes into it, the process of life and death, and the process of really becoming healthier again through better food. So I don't know, Brett, did you want to read through that and just...
Let's do it. Yeah, because we were doing prep work for this conversation, and we looked on the website, and you have very strong energy. And I felt like when we were reading through this, I was like, this has Austin written all over it. So I think it's a perfect starting point. So reconnect, rejoice, rejuvenate. In a world that encourages disconnection from reality, we revel in offering you intimacy with the land, food, and healing. In today's society, many people don't have any idea where their food comes from. Most food is highly processed and would not even be considered food if you asked our great-grandparents. At Counterculture Farms, we offer you intimacy with the land that all people once shared. We personally invite you to come and be part of the sacred ways of this life, the land, and our ancestors. Come and reignite your wild side. Come and share in the abundance. See where your food comes from. This is no factory. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. Come see the cows move, the goats baa, and the eagles soar. We want you to be a part of this sacred dance. There is much more to life than the grocery store has to offer.
What were you guys like? What drew that out of you guys?
That's a powerful. I haven't read that in a while for myself, so I appreciate the reminder. So when this first started, I was just very frustrated, just a frustrated young man, still frustrated young man some days. But basically, we've all gone to the grocery store. We've seen organic and grass-fed and all the other natural and, good Lord, whatever tag word they've come up for this month, to get us to spend more money on a product that may be a little bit better, but it's basically the same, and they've greenwashed it because it's the same company producing it. And when we dig deeper into it, we figure out that, oh man, they got us again. Okay, well, I'm going to go to this next organic product. Good Lord, are we not all frustrated with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's amazing that we have these options at the store, but also I thought the label meant I don't have to go do the research now. And yet you have to do the research between this product and this one, even though they both have the same certification. So when I'd been pretty sick, my gut was super jacked up, and I'd been to doctor after doctor and frustrated with the world, and that I couldn't even get some food to try and do like an elimination diet. And anyways, after all that and just trying to figure out how to eat clean, I realized, oh my God, there's not really a great way unless if you know where your food is produced and you talk to your farmer who is right down the road from you. You look him in the eyes and say, okay, what have you done? What are your practices? Are you doing this, this, and this? And typically it's not exactly what you want, but at least now you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when people ask me, I'm at the farmer's market just about every week, and they ask me, how to do this, basically how to find these clean products, because they're everywhere, right? There's a cleaner product somewhere. So I tell them to go find the person that's producing it, whether it's, some organic veggies or it's some grass-fed beef. You've got to go look the person in the eyes and make sure that this is a person that you can trust and that actually wants to feed your family right. And so we started transitioning what we had available, which was cows and land. We had goats too. Goats is another topic for later on. But we went on with the cows because they were actually alive and thriving, right? We did not know what we were doing with goats. So we just started rotating them. We started following these principles like, some of the bigger names, the people we've seen on YouTube, and they've been doing it for decades. And I went, oh, man, this may be another BS thing, but hey, maybe it'll work. And so we started doing it. We started seeing the land come back to life, and we just started cutting off all the stuff that they didn't need. So they don't need grain. They don't need herbicides and pesticides to be sprayed on the land. You just need to rotate and manage correctly. They don't need shots of any kind. That is the biggest lie. And even a lot of the grass-fed and organic people are still giving all these shots because we're told, well, what did they do 100 years ago? Good Lord, there weren't even vaccines.
Right.
I mean, come on. So all the animals were dead then, and all the humans were only eating, I don't know, some kind of veggie, because the animals can't live without a vaccine. It makes no sense to me.
It's amazing how quickly we forget about some of that, those older practices that are now kind of seen like so distant in the past.
Yeah. And it's a taboo thing to say what I just said out loud, big time. Whether it's your neighbor, whether it's saying it online, whatever, it's not a good thing to talk about, but it's the utmost truth that God did a really great job whenever he created all these animals and babies, humans, the entire thing. He did awesome. And if we'll just step back and go, okay, I don't know what this crazy thing is that we created, but let's take a step back and look at nature and nature's rules. Once you start following those principles, everything automatically starts getting healthier, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane to us because we've been raised in this system. But when you take a step out and you look at nature and you go to the mountains and you go hunting or fishing or just camping out there and you see moose and elk walking around stuff, you're like, wait, how are they alive? How are they thriving?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It almost feels like we're in a bit of an illusion when it comes to our food.
Right.
And I think something that's really powerful that you said is this concept of nature. I think you said either nature's principles or nature's way. That's how you use is like your kind of like your ranching staple. So I'm just curious, what does nature's way mean to you in terms of how you raise your animals?
Number one, they always move in nature. You can't keep those animals in the same spot. They may have an area that they hit. They may go between this few hundred acres and that. I don't know exactly how far they travel. I just know that they travel and they keep moving. And so that's how we apply it here. Whether you have 5 acres or 500, you are able to move those animals around. You'll just have to do it with fewer numbers. We've rotated on as few as like an acre and a half. And I had like 7 heifers out there and rotated them on a very small plot for like a month or two because it was a drought. We were out of grass. It is possible to do this on any size, but the rule is the animal must move. The more frequently, the better. It doesn't have to be 3 times a day. Once a day is pretty good. Once a week is way better than nothing, right? Even once a month in the growing season is much better than them being on it for the full 12 months of the year. So moving, yes. Nutrition, it starts getting a little bit deeper there. They've got an abundance. Joel Salatin calls it salad bar beef, right? So he talks about, just the abundance of what he has growing in his pastures, and that's what we need. In nature, there's never just one plant growing. There's always multiple species is an understatement. You go out in the woods and you're kicking and tripping over one plant after another after another. And so when we allow our animals to get that, both the grasslands and the woodlands and the wetlands and the dry land, and you move them throughout the whole thing, they start to get this balance to them where the animals that have been propped up completely by chemical agriculture and also, I don't know what the term would be, but conventional doesn't sound right, but where we just feed animals a lot. So that's what fell apart first for us was the big 1,500-pound cows. If they didn't have a molasses tub sitting out there to lick on that's still got some corn and soy byproducts. So by the way, for the listeners, if y'all are buying from someone who's putting out these molasses tubs out on their place. They've got corn and soy byproducts in them, so they're not grass-fed anymore. So that's a good one to know that most non-farmers wouldn't. There are some available that don't have that stuff in them, but they're like 4 or 5 times as much. So the farmer should be bragging about it if they're feeding it, right? So once you cut back all of the inputs for the animal now goes, oh crap, dude, what am I supposed to do? Like, I only have grass and some clover and whatever else is growing on your place. In nature, they know how to heal themselves. They know how to not overeat. They know what to eat, what not to eat. We have beaten that out of our animals. Swallow corn, right? Take more corn and soy and get as fat as possible, as quick as possible, so we can make some more McDonald's hamburgers, baby, right? That's not beef. Now, when you go out there and you eat some beef from someone who's doing it right, and they've eaten through all 4 seasons on pasture, and they've tasted the wildflowers, and they've also tasted the dormant grasses in the fall, and you put that into a steak, you can just about taste the wildflowers, right? You know, it's like eating deer. You know that this is a wild animal. So 3 things to cap would be moving the animals, the nutrition right. We need to have different plants. And then lastly is the environment, right? You've got to taste all the different environments, I think, for the beef, for any of the ruminants, really. But you've got to get them into the woods and on the grasslands. So goats actually die if you just keep them only on grass without other supplements. They need the woodlands. So constantly, actually, when y'all just drove in, our goats were not standing in the middle of the hayfield eating the cover crop, diverse cover crop. They still weren't eating those 12 species. They were out on the woodland, the line, eating privet hedge and yopon and the other things that we don't want taking over our property, but we want a little bit of so that our animals can pick at and get the nutrients that aren't available in the grasses.
Wow. I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and it's like, it's unironic that animal health is just a complete parallel to human health. You mentioned environment, nutrition, movement. Those are pillars of our health, but I think oftentimes we don't know how the animals that we're eating are being raised, so we don't even raise any questions when it comes to, is this even a healthy animal for me to be eating? There's kind of a connection there that people need to make when it comes to human nutrition. It's like, shouldn't be eating sick animals.
It's simple.
Would you be eating an animal that was essentially in a hospital just getting loaded with antibiotics and needed support to stay alive?
Oh, that's a cool one. Let's touch on that briefly. You can see, I'm not a brief person right now. I can go off into it, but briefly, this is one needs to be busted wide open, because we go and we see these no antibiotics on all the labels and stuff. Dude, you can get antibiotics in the animals. And if you're buying beef that has never had antibiotics in it, tell me this, how do they know? They didn't raise it from a calf. So if that farmer gave it antibiotics, that rancher, and then he sold it to the sale barn, and then it went to a feedlot, but they're claiming it has no antibiotics ever. Same thing's going on with the chickens and other stuff, but let's just keep it on the beef. You are allowed to give your animal antibiotics, right? It's your animal, whatever. Just the rule is, when you give it, there's a withdrawal period. So I think it's like 60 days. I don't know, because we don't treat ours with antibiotics. So on the bottle, whatever bottle you choose, it tells you if it's 45 or 60-day withdrawal period. So if you go and you sell it to the sale barn, you can be held accountable. If you gave it and 2 weeks later sold it out there, and then it went to be someone's beef and they tested it and it had antibiotics in it, you can be held accountable, right? So if you wait until it's 60 days and then you go sell it, you're good, because the antibiotics are out of its system, mostly. But we all know, right? We're taking in things all the time. It's part of the cells now. Like, I would rather have an animal that never had antibiotics versus one that had it and then passed the withdrawal period before it was butchered. But that is one that drives me nuts whenever I go to buy stuff at the store, because I'm like, well, this is not true at all. And yet it's all over the packaging, right?
Is it not crazy to you how many loopholes we have when it comes to our food? It must drive you insane.
Yes. I mean, crazy, insane. Yes, both words I feel on a daily basis for sure. going to the grocery store is not that fun, for sure. You're just looking over and over like all the lies that we're just eating up, shoveling in our mouth with a spoon, and we're happy about it. And we're paying 3 times as much for it. Like, they got us good.
They did get us good. And one of the things that you had mentioned when we kicked off is how your perspective on food and nutrition changed because you were sick and you were curing some issues with your gut. Were you ranching while you were having some of those issues, or did that lead you to get into ranching?
Part-time, yeah.
Part-time.
So my dad does a septic job in town, so he installs septic systems for local community, right? So I was helping him with that, worked full-time there. And then on the side, we always had cows and always had land. So my grandpa started that when I was younger. Didn't really care too much. I was a young idiot and just didn't realize the gold that I had when he wanted to go plant tomatoes or when he wanted to go stare at the cows. All I want to do now is go stare at the cows, right? And I'm like, man, I didn't take any of the advantages I had when he was older and just wanted me to go drive him out there to sit and stare at cows. So we all have our regrets, right? But it leads us into something beautiful. It always does. God takes something that was not meant for good and he uses it for good every single time. That's what our lives are completely made of. We all look back. You may still have it tough right now, but most everything in our life has been used for good. It's impressive. So anyways, we started on with that. We were doing that on the side, but it was like, hey, Dad, what do you think about let's plant some cover crops? What do you think about moving the animals, this and that? And it was hard because he had the previous mindset too. Thankfully, him and my mom were both very on board. I've been always, this crazy outsider kid, just, in trouble and just, they've always had my back. And so with this, it was really no different. And one day, I remember I was at one of those conferences and the person speaking said, you were always going to have somebody to tell you no. At every conference I go to, this is what the guy's saying, is I have some young guy raise his hand and go, well, what about my dad saying this? And I want to do all this, but my grandpa won't let me, or some generational figure in their family wants to keep it the same way. And basically, the answer is shut up and go do it. Get over it. Go get some of your own land. Go lease something. Ask them to use 10 acres of it. If you've got 1,000 acres, ask them to have a small portion and just show them. That typically, people outside your family are never going to, even when you show them. I have some crazy stories of showing people, turning land around in months, and them still don't care. Just don't care at all. So when we took it and we started doing little things, it was just, hey, let's start unrolling hay. All right, so you just take a big round bale, and you unroll it instead of putting it in a big metal ring and letting 10 or 12 cows sit around it and eat it. Typically, people will feed, they call it a sacrifice lot. So if you have 50 acres, you take 5 or 10 of those acres and you just feed your hay over there so it doesn't mess up the rest of your ground. Because when it's wet and nasty out here in the winter, it does. It pugs up the ground. They stick their hooves off in it, and it basically really compacts the soil and kind of ruins the soil life for a period. And so, again, it goes back to the movement. Keep your animals moving, and you get past that. So we started unrolling hay. That way, more of the organic matter was dispersed in a big 100-yard line instead of in a small, 20-foot area. We started planting cover crops. That was a big game changer. Even on years where cover crops don't work, plant them. Even if you can't afford it, plant them. Y'all are seeing the place right now. This is after years and years of cover crop. Good Lord. This is December, middle of December, and it looks like a golf course out here. It is so green.
It's incredible.
Could you maybe describe just cover crops for people who are showing up to the podcast from more of the nutritional angle?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are interested in some of these finer details of what you're talking about.
For sure. So cover crop, just anything that you're going to put out in the pasture that's not already there. A better term for this would be pasture cropping, but to cover crop real quick. Typically it's used by farmers who they plant wheat and they want to harvest that crop. And so then after they harvest it, they come and plant, It could be a variety of things, but let's just say they plant sorghum. It's another plant variety. They're going to plant it. It is solely to cover the soil. So cover crop. You want to keep the soil covered at all times. But there's amazing things you can do with this. So you can plant turnips and, or let's go with daikon radish or turnips and rye or wheat. Wheat is typically used around here as a cover crop. So when our grasses go dormant in the summer and they turn brown and they're not really nutritive value or anything, people will go in and seed into that, pasture cropping. They'll seed into an existing sod, an established grass, and plant something that will grow when it doesn't. So basically fall, winter, spring. In spring, it jumps up 3 foot tall like the wheat that blows in the wind, right? It's not something you really want there all year long, but if you plant wheat and turnips together, the turnips will really only come up well in the fall, and they put their little roots on, and then the top freezes off. In the spring, that decomposes and gives all the nutrients like nitrogen to a heavy sucking crop like wheat or rye. It all works together. We know this, but we started using cover crops and started basically planting these into our existing grasses. And the craziest thing was, everyone told me, this is going to destroy your Bermuda grass. It's going to hurt all your pasture grasses that all your cows live and thrive on all year long. This is the complete opposite. All of them got healthier. This year, oh my goodness, the numbers astound me. But in the past 3 years cutting this place, without any chemical fertilizer, without any synthetic use of any kind, no herbicides, no pesticides, nothing, but no fertilizer added, our crops have done this, our hay crop, because we cut and produce all of our own hay on this place also. So we graze here. We also have a few hay fields. Well, how on earth are we getting a higher crop, a higher harvest every single year? So let's say the first year we got 2 or 3 bales. This year we got like 6 to 8 on some of them.
Wow.
So from year 1 to 3, we've tripled. That's, how do you even do that? You're a liar, right? Like, I don't know, man, I'm counting the bales. So cover cropping and rotating the animals is how we've done it. Y'all saw the sheep in the front. They're on a hayfield right now. The big no-no in ag is don't put your animals back on your hayfield. It'll mess them up in the winter and muck them up. My pasture was pretty green out there. It didn't look very mucked up,
Yeah, it was.
right? You just have to move them. So we move them every 2 days right now. They're eating it down. It's about like this. They're eating it down 6 inches down to probably 2 or 3. But what they're doing is they're taking a bite of it, and they are recycling those nutrients, that grass, through their manure, leaving it back out, and then the manure goes back into the soil and enhances the soil biology to where we just added fertilizer, right? And so we plant more cover crops so that there are different nutrients to recycle, and then you can also feed your hay back onto the pasture, which is a lot harder to not mess up the pasture. But cover crops are phenomenal.
Go ahead.
It's interesting having a lot of these conversations and with people like yourself and learning more about the damage that chemical fertilizer actually has on the soil that you're so intensely trying to create and build. It's like there's almost, if you extract the two principles apart, there's one that's creating life in the soil and there's one that's completely abstracting life out of the soil, right?
100%. Just like everything else, right?
Yeah.
There's good over here, there's evil over here, there's something for life, there's something against life. And the crazy thing about synthetic or chemical fertilizer, they're focused on 3 nutrients, yes, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's basically what even your organic stuff at the store, right? It's like, oh, well, it's organic. Well, it still doesn't have very many other minerals in it or nutrients in it. But anyways, when you're applying the synthetic fertilizer to your land, what does it do? Well, one, go and look back what it was made from. It was made from the war. They brought the stuff back that they had. Well, they didn't bring it back. They had factories set up making the stuff, so they had abundance there. What do we do with it? Then they figure out how to apply it and grow a crop with it. And it worked really, really well. It still does. It's working less and less well every year, but it still works well. So when you go and apply that, yes, it compacts the soil, it hardens the soil. But my biggest biggest concern with it all. Okay, soil is a community. So we have roots. Y'all listen to Ray. He's beautiful when he speaks about the soil, right?
He really
Yeah.
is.
So whenever he would pull the plants out and the root mass that hung, it was like, it was a small city, right? There was all these little bits and pieces of soil all over it, but it was just, it looked almost like you cut my hair off and you were just holding it, and it all bound together, and you could see bugs in it too. It was wild. There should be earthworms and all that. Great. Okay, that's what we need. What do you do whenever you put synthetic fertilizer with that? Disconnect all that. So you look at the roots. Well, it doesn't have the aggregation with the soil at that point. Why? Less and less every year, right? Because you have now taught the plant you don't need the soil. The plant takes it up from the chemical fertilizer. It takes its life up from the fertilizer. So now it doesn't have to communicate with its community anymore, which this all points back to everything we're going through, right? You don't need your community anymore. You don't need your neighbor. You don't need each other. You just need the chemicals or the pill, right? You just need the chemicals, and the plant is going to thrive all on its own. That's great if you do that like once, okay? It's not even that big of a deal. Yes, it harms the soil, but you've left now all the bacteria and the fungi that need the plant, which is putting liquid sunshine into the soil, right? They're needing that. They don't photosynthesize. They're like, we can feel the sunlight on the top of the soil. We need it, but nothing's putting this liquid gold where we can digest it and use it and build more community, more life. So it's a huge deal when you have this going on and you have the community. When you apply the chemical fertilizer, just pull that apart and you basically have two button heads. The roots can't connect with the soil, soil can't connect with the roots. And there's all kinds of little livestock in the soil that are going, okay, we need each other, but they're like this. So now the chemical fertilizer runs out. Everyone starts going, we're trying. Okay, they apply the next dose, right? And it's over and over, and you have this breakdown of community in the soil, and then you do that for decades. And we wonder why the soil's dead, because it's had a nuke dropped on it several times a year for the past however long they've been practicing chemical agriculture.
How did you go about acquiring this incredible level of knowledge and skill set that you have with ranching and just understanding soil health and everything that you're able to speak to so intricately on the show? Like, is it someone that you learn from? Is there a workshop that you went to, or is it just practical experience? Maybe it's some combination of all three. I'm just curious.
Failure, right? Which is not failure. And, successful people know that. But it's a combination of all three, 100%. Practice, yes. The conferences are great. YouTube, books, the genius minds that have been doing this for years and years, long before anyone even had these terms of organic and regenerative and all that. There have been pioneers for it that are generous enough to go teach and share. But no matter how many books you read and how much YouTube you watch and conferences and all that, until you go out there and you put it into practice, it does not matter. You don't know any of it. I talk to people all the time. We'll sell animals to them who are on fire coming from the city, and I'm all for it. They're moving out here to 5 or 10 or 500 acres, whatever it is. They are moving out to try and reconnect with the land, and they are passionate about it. They know everything, right? Some of them don't. But to prove the example, some of them already know everything because they have read the book and done all that. And it's... I'm like, all right, man, I'll sell you the animals, but I'm telling you, go apply that stuff on your place, because some of it will work, and then you'll realize some of it doesn't. It's a great idea, but you have to tweak the idea. There's a real famous guy that talks about when to lamb on pasture, when to calve on pasture, several of them up north. It doesn't work down here in the south, right? Their nature, because the rule is, they want to calve and sync with nature. Well, their nature is different from ours. It's like March is greening up and clovers are here. May is when clovers come there. Their winter is way longer. So I don't want to wait till May, because my Bermuda and different plants have come up that are way less of nutritive value than if I were to lamb in March. And so we've got to take all these ideas and be able to still think, which is a problem with our culture. We need someone to just tell us what to do and we'll go do it. Well, we're not in school anymore. This is life and death. And we've really got to take all three, like you said, and go out and apply it.
Let's take a minute to talk about some of the sponsors and brands who support the show.
What are you thinking?
I was thinking about Carnivore Bar. What are your thoughts on Carnivore Bar?
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable product. We were lucky enough to have the founder, Philip Meese, on the show a few months ago, and he was able to send us a bunch of product when we started the relationship and absolutely loved it. I mean, it's a minimum ingredient product, beef, tallow, salt, and then they do have a honey flavored option as well, but it's so nice to have a bar that's like 3 to 4 ingredients. And like when you're following a carnivore diet, it's really tough to find products that are in line with that specific diet,
Yeah, for me, it kind of hits like the holy trinity of what you're looking for when you're looking for food. So it's nutrient dense, it's convenient, and it tastes great. And as you said, most people who are trying to eat healthy, the convenience factor is kind of a tough part. So just being able to have something you can grab on the go, know that you're going to have that nutrition for the day, it's huge.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough, we got to actually see their factory too in Missouri, and they're just doing things the right way. I love how they offer an option for like carnivore purists where it's just beef, tallow, salt. And then they also have an animal-based option too. If you do want a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of variety, they have the honey in that option. And they're just people that are doing things the right way. They're very mission focused. They're carnivores themselves. And, we're always on the go. We're traveling. We've taken a bunch of flights together. To have a bar that has 30 grams of fat too, like that's huge from an energy density standpoint, right?
Yeah, he checks all the boxes, or the company checks all the boxes. And I just think the fact that they're sourcing from a regenerative farm as well, and Joyce Farms, just a win-win.
100%. The Carnivore Bar. So we got the affiliate link, and then it's code MAFIA for 10% off.
And then another one of our sponsors, one of our favorite farms, Holy Cow. What they're doing at Holy Cow is pretty remarkable. The relationships that they've built in the industry and how long they've been doing the grass-fed, grass-finished regenerative model is really innovative. They were one of the first people to be doing that and supplying whole foods early on. Just a great community farm, and also just product is something that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think number one, to your point, Harry, they're just incredible people. We got to hear them speak at the Beef Initiative conference in Colorado. We had never met them before, but just hearing Warren's story where they were following a standard American diet, he had had a heart attack, and they were just looking for answers of like, how can we actually get healthier? Do I need to be dependent on medication? And they started changing their diets to incorporating more animal foods, and he completely reversed those symptoms of his stroke. And now they're just doing things the right way. They're grass finishing their beef. They're incorporating incredible practices. They have great relationships with the animals, and they're very passionate about just like connecting directly with the customer and also educating their customer on grass finished beef.
Yeah, and I think the best part is too, they're shipping nationally and trying to reach a bigger audience. So being able to not only supply beef nationally, but also educate people on the quality of good, clean, whole foods is just, it's an incredible mission.
How much do you love their beef bacon, by the way? I know that's your go-to.
Dude, it's one of the best things I've ever tasted.
It's that good.
No, honest to God, it's so good.
Holy cow.
Yeah. One of the other farms that supports us is Perennial Pastures, another regenerative farm out of San Diego. Our experience with Kevin Munoz, the owner, we had him on the show, a young first-generation rancher who's really empowered by this movement of regenerative agriculture and really wants to be a leader in the space. I think our conversation with him was so insightful, just in terms of how mission focused he is and how he really thinks about his farm as a business and wanting it to be here 50, 100 years down the road, even though he's just the first generation of it. And I think just being able to spend time with him out in San Diego was kind of the perfect indication of that, where we got to go have a meal with him at his house, hang out with his wife and kids. Like, what an amazing person. And I think his mission focus around raising really high quality beef and restoring nutrients to the soil is just one of those rare missions that I think everyone can get around.
Yeah, he has such a commitment to really feeding the local community in San Diego, in the San Diego County, first and foremost, but he's also passionate about feeding the community around the country. So I know they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources to being able to order beef in bulk on their website. So I know that they now offer quarter, half, whole cows directly off the website. They have that great ancestral blend ground beef product. So it actually has organ grinds mixed into the ground beef. So you're getting the benefits of like an ounce or so of organ meat, but because it's in the ground beef, you really can't taste it at all. And I think to your point, Harry, just another amazing person. Kev was someone that he was following a paleo diet in college and started realizing, wow, when I nourish my body with real foods, I feel amazing. Had a really successful stint in tech, but realized that there was just something else that he was passionate about. So he's one of those rare cases where, he put his money where his mouth is, and he's a first generation farmer, just, bootstrapping this thing, raising money, and just so passionate about feeding the community. Just an amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on organ supplements, and what do you think about the company that supports our podcast, Optimal Carnivore?
Such a good question, man. I think organ meat is something that's gained a ton of notoriety the last few years, and for good reason. I don't want to speak for you, but I think both of us have had a ton of benefits just incorporating organ meats into our diet. I would say that, we definitely prefer the raw source of organs, where we'll just, chop up some liver and some heart, and, there are different ways to prepare it. I think the raw source is the most nutrient dense, but we're fortunate that there are companies like Optimal Carnivore that exist that freeze dry organ capsules, so you can actually take them on the go. There are a ton of times where we're traveling where we're not going to have access to raw organs. So I can throw a little Ziploc bag together of Optimal Carnivore and be good to go. And I think 6 pills is an ounce of organs, which is like the daily recommended amount that will give you a lot of those really good quality vitamins in there. So that's kind of how I think we've been using it. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think the fact that it just makes organs accessible to people, and I think that organs are generally just a food group that are underutilized when it comes to eating nose to tail, and the nature's vitamin is a perfect name for these organ foods. And I think a lot of people are pretty in the mainstream object to eating organ meats, but when you put it in a pill form that's doesn't taste bad, it's convenient, you can put it in your backpack, it makes things a lot easier. And I also think that just generally these brands are Optimal Carnivore is focused on making people healthier, which is just such a strong mission. And I think liver capsules is a great way to get people thinking about their health differently.
100%. There's probably someone that's listening to this right now, and you're interested in organ meats, but the taste might make you a bit squeamish. You feel strange about eating raw foods. Maybe you cook liver and you don't like it. Maybe it has a metallic taste. I think that's also where the organ capsules play such a great role, is that you're still getting that nutrient density, but you're getting it in a very convenient capsule-like format, and it just takes away any of that squeamishness that you might have to the taste. It's just a great product. And also Richard, who runs Optimal Carnivore, he's started listening to the show really early on, and he's built his own organ supply chain and is just doing things the right way and really trying to support the right people in the space. So just proud to be associated with them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening. Now we're going to go back to the show.
That's it.
Are there any moments of failure in your earlier years or times ranching that stick out that ended up being a great learning experience for you?
So many.
Are there?
Yeah. Of just specific times where I failed and it helped propel me forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe earlier you thought you knew something and then it didn't go as planned, but looking back on it, you're like, that actually taught me a lot about ranching, and it's something that you apply now.
Lots. The goats, they're my biggest teachers, right? They're the master and I am the student. A buddy of mine as a kid, and he said his kid always tells him that, Dad, goat's just another 4-letter word, It is so true. Those things will test everything that you have inside of you and make you wonder if you are a man or not, if you're a 4-year-old child. So they are awesome creatures, but it's kind of like keeping deer and being like, I'm going to tame these things. And they're like, actually, I'm smarter than you. So the biggest deal with goats, so they're a dryland creature, and I've taken them to the wetland. And these creatures need an insane amount of movement. Like on several hundred acres here, they are never in the same place for more than about 5 or 10 minutes, unless they're laid up chewing their cud. But if they're up eating, they will take 5 or 6 bites in this pasture, move to the other side of it, pick once or twice, move all the way down to the river, maybe hang out there for a half hour, and they're just constantly going. They're like deer in the woods. They're just browsing. So I didn't know that at first, and I talked at the conference about that, of seeing piles and piles of dead animals, which is a hard thing to talk about, but when we're failing here ranching, it's death. That's the failure. When you go out and something is dead and you're picking up a lifeless body that has returned its life elsewhere, and now you've got the physical shell that either that will return to the soil, but you're having to be the coroner. You know, you're right in the middle. So when I learned that with the goats, it was life changing. So anyone listening that has goats, move them more than once a week. You know, they need it. So the movement of animals, goats taught me that it was the most important thing. So without it, you can have all the organic and regenerative principles you want, but you've got to move your animals. Another thing was weed control. I used to think, it was really, there was one weed that actually took over my grandpa's pasture, and it's called purple top thistle. And it has this big purple flower on it. It grows like 6 to 8 foot tall, and it has these thorns on it, and it sticks out, 3 foot wide. It's just a monster weed, and it chokes out all the grass. I didn't realize that it was all my management that was causing it. So we had constantly stocked cows on the place. They never got to get off. Well, we start rotating. It got a little bit better, but I thought, okay, so most people's opinion on that around here are spray it, right? So spray it with some kind of herbicide and get rid of it. Well, it still comes back. So even if it goes away for a year or two or several years, it's going to come back at some point. This thing looks like a dandelion. The seeds are ridiculous. There's thousands and thousands. So God did something amazing when he made this plant. It shoots this deep taproot down into the soil. When you pull it up, it looks like a long carrot. It's amazing. And so it's actually breaking up the soil. So where is this stuff growing? In anaerobic conditions, so heavily compacted soil, no oxygen, right? What does it need? It needs oxygen in the soil, just like we need, just like all the bacteria and the fungi need. And so there's a bacteria that works with this plant. It doesn't thrive in aerobic conditions, forgive me. This bacteria only thrives in soils with low oxygen. So if you put oxygen back in the soil, get the compost out there, get the aeration in the soil, get deep roots in the soil, guess what? This weed literally just disappears. So this gives me this insight into nature and how she's actually working, that she is working with us and not against us. We're just the idiots that are hitting our head against the wall going, how do I get rid of this weed? What poison do I use? I need to beat her into submission. And she's going, right, you idiot, listen, I'm trying to help you. And so we would mow it, yes, but we would wait. So when I found all that out, I had done all this research on it and finally found this dude who had published something on it. I forget who it was, but anyways, he told me that, and it all clicked with the bacteria and the root of the plant working together. So I had been mowing before the plant got to do its job. So I've been shredding. I'd do it like 3 times a year, and this plant would just jump right back up, and I'm just wasting all my time. So when we changed that, we waited until the plant grew fully. It put out its flower, and then we came and chopped it all down. So we let it complete its life cycle. We let it complete its life cycle, put its roots down into the soil, decompact it, enhance the soil biology, and then we went and mowed it down. And you could not walk through this pasture without getting thistles stuck in you, right? Thorns, it was bad. Now you can go out there and you can actually count 1, 2, like earlier this year, that's how I do my management on it, is how many can I count this year? Well, last year it was about 100. Before that, it was like 1,000 because I couldn't even count. And so this next year, hopefully I can count, 30 or 40 and that's it. But on a 20-acre pasture that was completely taken over by thistle, and all we did was start working with nature's way again, and it healed itself. nature will heal itself is what I keep getting taught over and over.
You use the expression insights into nature, and it's one of these things where I feel like we're not paying enough attention. And I'm wondering, as you've gone and met more people, do you see other people waking up to this idea of being a little bit more observational? Because I think Brett asked you the question about, farming, what have you learned? And it's almost this perfect balance of like systems thinking, but also understanding that there's a lot more creativity and nuance into how this world actually works. And there's these communities that you mentioned and reliance on each other. So it's really this beautiful combination of two worlds of thinking. And I'm curious, do you see us being able to break paradigms and start to re-engage in this observational science again?
100%, right? That's why we're sitting here, because y'all are interested and I'm interested. All you need's 2 people. We got 3. So
hell yeah.
You just got to start somewhere. And there's all the people who are listening to this are interested. We're all sick and tired of the system. So there's a lot that aren't. We still, we talked about it before, but we still see tons of people who are not wanting to go with change. That part's frustrating. Someone asked me the other day, very similar question. And basically, how am I getting the people around here to change? And how do I get the other farmers to change? And how do I get the other people who don't want my meat to buy it? I said, I don't. I wasted so much damn time doing that in the beginning, very immaturely. There are so many people who want clean beef and who want to know about regenerative practices and how to heal the land and how to heal the animals without poison, which leads to us healing ourselves. I want to focus on those people. Mm-hmm. And to answer your question, yes, there's a large, like where we met, right? At the conference, there were like 300 people there.
Yeah, 100%.
And they came from all the states. And that was just one little gathering. You have all these other conferences that people are seeking this out. And now is the time for change because people want it and they're hungry for it. And if we don't give it to them now, we know how we can be as humans and we'll fall right back into the same old crap. So we need to move with the momentum. And I think it's nothing but momentum right now, really.
Being a rancher and being so connected to the land, to the animals, to life, to death, to actually procuring food for consumers that might be listening to this podcast right now, what are just some things that come to mind of like you just wish the average consumer understood when it came to their food?
Well, lots, but the biggest deal would just be, I'm very passionate about what I do. I work very hard, like y'all saw when you came in, and y'all were asking, are you the only one out here? I was like, yeah, y'all saw me beating in the T-post, right? Like, that's me. I want people to go and look their farmer and their rancher in the eyes because there's plenty of great people that are still feeding corn to their animals and that they finished it fully on grass and then for the last 90 days they did corn. Great. I don't care. As long as you're just not telling somebody that it's fully grass-fed, right? So we've got to, I could go off on many stories, but we've got to just reconnect with our community and with our land and with our farmers and ranchers. And as soon as you get reconnected to your food, then you can be able to choose what you do and don't want. But you don't want to just be blindly buying the label at the store. You've got to reach out and find the local person who is doing it. Even if it's an hour or 2 away from you, find someone who is doing what you align with. And so if I want a fully grass-fed product, literally an animal that eats nothing but what grows out of the earth on my place because all the life comes from the soil. So I want to raise my own hay. I want to raise all my own grass here, and I don't want to bring anything in because I want people to eat Nacogdoches, right? I want them to eat out of the soil that they were birthed out of, because that's how we really reconnect, is we sit down and we thank Mother Earth that we're here, that the beef came out of it, that we came out of it, and that every other thing that we enjoy came up out of the earth. And without us reconnecting with her and loving her again, we have no hope, like none.
Are you just servicing your community here locally, or have you thought about doing any of the D2C stuff that some of these bigger brands are starting to do?
What was the term you used?
Like servicing. So,
DDC though? Or?
Direct to consumer.
Yes. Okay. Yes. We are doing some. I've tried the shipping. I'm not a big enough company to eat whenever I lose the product. So whenever I ship the product and UPS, FedEx, whoever loses it, that is frustrating and hard. So you've paid this insurance, and anyways, I've had to eat several boxes full of beef, so I don't ship anymore for that reason. I do offer basically anyone close in Texas, come drive, come pick up, and I will work with you. Call me, and we will work with getting you set up with like a quarter, half, or whole beef. I had a friend who came, a friend now, but beforehand, she reached out on social media. They brought 2 chest freezers on the back of their trailer, came and filled them both up, bought 2 whole beeves, and took them back. Well, 1 whole beef is going to last your entire family of 4 or 5 for a year, and that's if y'all are eating a bunch of beef. So there's ways to get around it. If you align with somebody and you're really all for what they do, like I tell people now, because of all the greenwashing, back to your previous question of, what do y'all need to know? Well, there's tons of greenwashing. So I say no grain, no poison, no bullshit, because I want people to know 100% these animals have had 0 grain. So if you're eating cow, beef, or goat from me, it has had 0 grain its whole life. It has had no poison. So I haven't given it any medicine at all. I have given it no help. Our land is not sprayed with anything, so we do no herbicides or pesticides. We don't even deworm our animals. And that's one of the biggest things that I would be concerned about as a consumer is a large percentage of people are deworming, which is fine. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just I don't want to weaken the immune system of the animal anymore. I want to eat as clean of an animal as possible. So it comes up out of the soil. I offer it this great life. And then if I do a good job, I get to harvest it at the end of its life, and it gives me more life. Why do I need to put this or whatever medicine or help inside of it when I just really want to eat what Mother Earth gives me, right? So if we do a really good job, it doesn't need the extra inputs. And the no BS goes back to what every single consumer listening to this should do is you need to go look your farmer rancher in the eye and make sure they give you no BS.
Mm-hmm.
If they give you a little bit, you go to somebody else. I don't care if they're doing the best grass-fed program in the state, if they finish Wagyu, whatever it is, you nail them with the questions that you need answers, and you have a conversation with them and make sure that you can trust that individual, that they don't have any BS in their eyes, that they are giving you everything. Because that's what I struggled with in the beginning. I couldn't find somebody who'd look me in the eyes and go, I'm as serious about it as you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I have these people coming to me now going, my daughter's been sick with this, or my son, or we've been injured by this or this, and we want something that literally has nothing else in it besides it came from the soil. You helped it on your land. Yes, we have toxins in the air and the water and the soil, right? We live in this world, but on our land, we don't add anything extra. So it's constantly healing, constantly getting better. And that's what a lot of people are moving towards.
Definitely. It seems like there's almost this misconception that if you're buying beef or food at the farmer's market, it's automatically healthy. But it sounds like there are probably some people that are doing some shady things. Is there anything that you see at the farmer's market that you observe that you're like, damn, I wish that they understood that they're getting duped by whoever's selling that food?
Grass-fed doesn't really mean anything anymore. So that's why, you just got to go talk to them. You need to ask them, like, I could give a long list of questions, but one, ask them, did they ever feed any grain? Because you need a yes or no answer. Has this animal had one lick of grain? If that's where you're at and you want fully grass-fed, grass-finished, ask them that question. If they stutter, if they go, well, if they do anything, that animal has had something else. You can ask them, have they had any other supplements that contain grain? A lot of people use the lick tubs I was talking about, which is just a tub full of molasses, hardened molasses with corn or soy byproduct and a few other minerals. Definitely ask them that. Have they gotten anything else? You can ask them, have they received any antibiotics ever in their entire life? Have you given them any medicines, any shots, anything? And then how focused are you on soil health? That's a big one, right? Because you can eat grass-fed beef all damn day. They even raise some in a feedlot just feeding it hay, right? So you need to know, is this coming from a person who is every single time that you take a bite, this is what I tell my customers, our beef's getting tastier and healthier because we're so focused on soil health. If our soil is not getting better each year, which we're grazing in December right now, we have yet to do that. So our soil is getting much, much healthier and much more alive. So if you're getting more life into the soil, more life into the meat, you're getting more life into the person.
Do you find it like you're able to charge as much as you would like to for the beef that you're raising with how much you're putting into it compared to maybe somebody who's cutting some corners?
No. I would love to charge much more because no one, and I mean nobody, is charging what it costs to buy land. So we're all doing this basically for free, let's just say it. You think about any other business, this is ludicrous. It's ludicrous what the entire beef industry is built upon. But let's just say that you want to get into this, so we'll run some quick numbers. You come from the city and you go, I'm going to feed the world because I saw these big names doing it, and great, I'm happy for you. Come on, I'll help you out as much as I can. But you come and you buy 20 acres around here. Okay, then you buy 10 head. That's what you can easily carry on that place, especially if you're moving. But 1 cow to 2 acres around here is the typical carrying capacity. So you buy 20 acres at $5,000 for that 20, right? It ain't around. It's not for sale at that price. It's like 8 to 10. And even then, they're selling some places that are wooded at 8 to 10. So now you have to convert it to grass. For the example, we're just saying a low number, 5,000. It's a beautiful hayfield. It is ready to go. It's been taken good care of, and you've got 10 cows. So we're at $100,000 for the land. Now we've got our cows. You got some cheap cows somebody was getting out of, and they're all bred. So you've got $1,000 per cow, which is a stupid low price for quality. Okay, so now we're at $110,000. That first year, you're not going to raise anything. You're not even going to know what you're doing, right? But if you do, and you're good, you've got 10 calves hit the ground because it's 9 months gestation. So by the end of the year, we've got 10 calves. Great. We're going to raise them all for meat just because we're only doing this local thing. So they're not going to be ready for another 2 years. Well, we're a year into this, and we just now got them. Okay, well, even if, let's just say a calf came with the cow, right? And then you go 2 years from that, you're still 2 years down the road. Okay, if you go sell that to the sale barn and you just go, I just want to get some money in my pocket first because I have 100,000 plus out just for the land. You go to the sale barn and sell those 10 calves, the very best, a ludicrous 1 day out of the year on the best year we've had, you're going to get $1,000 for that calf. Most likely you're going to get $400 or $500 for it. Okay. $500, 10 calves, right? Math is way off.
Right.
So then let's say that you are doing a great job and every year successionally you are raising these calves, you're finishing off for beef. So every year you're going to have 10. So we're 2 years down the road, great, but we've got 10 that we can go sell. You did a great job finishing and you got, let's just go with the top end. You got 400 pounds of grass-fed beef ready for consumer and you sell it at the wholesale price, which would be like you're getting everything basically as good as you can. But you sell the whole beef to somebody for $10 a pound. You're at $4,000 each. Okay, what did it take you to go for those 2 years? You had to get the mama through gestation 1 year on hay. The next year, you had to get the calf on hay. And the year after that, calf on hay. Well, on a normal year, maybe $300 is fine per year. But on a year like this, hay is 3, 4, 5 times the price. So now we're at 500 plus per head. As I'm explaining all this, maybe some of you are lost, but the point being is that all these numbers are so completely lopsided, you are never going to pay for the land without this being like a 50-year deal. Or you stacking enterprises. Get you broilers, which I'm not an advocate for, but get you broilers, sheep, and then maybe start with cows or something later. Get something with a quicker turnaround. And you can start being more profitable more quickly. But there is not a great way for us to just pay for all this land. So now you've either got to have land or lease it. The entire system seems like it's set up for us not to feed ourselves, right?
100%.
Yeah, we've taken the profitability out of like the most essential foundational element of our society.
Now you have to go to the store. You peasant, you
Right.
Yeah.
go buy from whatever big company you want to name. You will buy from us. We will provide what you will eat, how you will eat, when you will eat.
Mm-hmm.
And if we decide not to send the trucks to the grocery store, guess what? You won't eat that day either. We are fully in control. Well, hell no is what I say, because that is not how I was raised. That's not what this country was founded on, and that's not the direction I'm going, right?
Was that a big inspiration for the name itself, counterculture?
Everything we've talked about.
Yes.
Yeah. And me, myself, right? So I'm very counterculture. I get asked a lot, so you're against the culture. No. I'm against the current culture, right? Yeah. But I'm for all my neighbors. I'm for my community. I'm for people. That's why I'm the one taking the brunt, or one of the ones taking the brunt. When someone leads the way, right, the spearhead gets blunted. It hurts over and over, but somebody's got to go do it, and someone's got to go, hey, you don't actually have to do it all this way. You don't have to buy all the stuff they're telling you, just like we don't have to take 10 pills a day. We could eat well and heal ourselves and move in a direction of healing instead of more sickness. And all the food goes back to that too. So if they're controlling everything that we're eating and everything we're putting into our bodies, well, how come we're not doing amazing then? If they love us so much and are taking great care of us, how come we're all going to the doctors too and having to pay them more money? Well, because the whole system's stacked against us. And so until we start to change the system and say, you know what? Y'all fed us for long enough and we're sick enough. We are all very aware of the sickness of humanity because we all know plenty of people who are very sick, right? Or at least have been. So now we want to heal, and we're going to go that direction. So
a lot of times it almost seems like we've just accepted sickness as the status quo, to the point where you deciding to be intentional about your choices and connect with a rancher, or not touch your cows with needles or injections. You literally are naming your farm counterculture, because it's so crazy to what we've been taught as a society about our food. We just accept sickness for whatever reason.
I don't.
No, the three of us don't.
Yes.
But it's such a great name for the farm too, just because it speaks to the cultural plague that we're being starved culturally in a lot of ways too. I think there's just so many different layers of this that you can peel it back more and more, and how much of it actually does just relate to really high quality food is now like almost a privilege. Like you need to just be like really, really sharp about who you're getting your food from. And like that's where we established community originally, I think, is around food and around small community, people that you have to rely on. It's literally exactly what you were talking about with the soil, which I think people who like yourself, like Taylor Collins, our podcast with him, he touched on the same thing. He says human health and soil health are one and the same. I don't think a lot of people think about it that way, but it's spot on.
It's beautifully put. Yeah, that's spot on, man.
Have you seen a nice increase in demand for clean beef, and does that encourage you?
Oh, yeah. Selling a lot more of it than I was the
Hell
first
yeah.
year. First year was tough. I was giving away a lot of beef. The way I got people was I'd sit up at the farmer's market and, you got to be a little bit of a salesman, right? It's like, it's just beef. A lot of people eat beef around here. It's a community of agriculture, right? So beef's the same, chicken's the same. It's all. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, take my $10 a pound ground beef. Take it home. You got beef in the freezer, right? Or in the fridge. Okay, make burgers out of yours, make burgers out of mine. Put no seasoning on either one and take a bite and let me ruin that other crap you've been eating. They look at me like, you little, just lunatic talking. Yeah. Anyways, they're not happy about it. They kind of like laugh, like, is this a joke? Is he getting one over on me? Is he just talking shit, And so they'll go, and I've had cowboys do it. I've had stay-at-home moms and everything in between. And they always come back. They don't always come back to buy, because some people are just not going to. They're going to keep going to Walmart and buy the commodity, cheapest stuff. Great. I don't care. They can buy it all day long. It's there for them. But the people who want it and come back and they're like, okay, so tell me more about what you do. Not that 2-minute blip of no grain, no poison. We don't spray anything, blah, blah, blah. they're like, okay, now that I tasted it, right, their taste bud did something to their body and went, hey, go get some more of that stuff. And so at first I would be giving away a lot of it and just telling people to compare it. Now I don't have to really do that anymore, which is great. I do it some, if people really want to argue or if they're just really interested, I'll still give some to them, let them try it just because it's a good drug dealer, right? You get the first little bit and then they're going to come back for some more. But it is a lot better than what it used to be. And I think the word, and like we said earlier, the movement or the momentum is continuing to move on as some of the great speakers are doing, and then the low-level people too. Like, not that they're greater, but there's people moving from the city, especially in the past couple years. Oh my goodness, there's so many people flooding out of the cities back to the land because, yes, they've been awakened to a few things, but their body is craving the connection with Mother Earth. And I believe craving a connection with our Creator.
Where are you feeling most of the resistance coming from? Like, as you continue to put this message out there, is it fellow farmers who maybe see your message as something that's threatening to them, or just, customers not really aware or awakened to like the quality that you're putting out there?
And where am I focused on spreading that message? Or?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, you mentioned that tip of the spear analogy earlier as someone who's vocal and has a really strong opinion, is knowledgeable about all these things. But I imagine, being the tip of the spear, you're taking or experience a lot of resistance from people who just want things to kind of just stay the same, or, whatever.
I am focusing on the people who want the change.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I talk with my neighbors and, they'll laugh at me. They're kind, they're just like, so what are you doing now? And I'll tell them. And a lot of the responses I get are that's just not the way Daddy did it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But this one guy told me down the road, and it really broke my heart a little, because I do reach out to these people, and they're all part of the community, and I love them and I want them to. I'm also tired of getting told you're an idiot, But this year was a crazy drought. So this guy has about, 400 or 500 acres, big place, 150 head of cattle. I mean, a big place. He goes through the year, we hit this drought. He tells me every week that he's got this much grass on his place. Like, it looks like the pavement is what his words were. Looks like the pavement we're standing on. Oh, man, damn, dude. You ever think about doing something different,
Yeah.
And he tells me, well, it's a hard one this year, and we're out there feeding grain. This is the middle of the summer, and every couple days they're out there dumping. He's feeding thousands of dollars worth of grain a week. You're just going, dude. And he's just trying to keep the cows alive. So they're all going downhill quick. So he does this for a couple months, holds on as long as he can. He finally goes and sells them all at the sale barn, right? Like half his herd. And it's a young herd, like 5 to 7-year-old cows. He sells half his herd. Why? Because of the drought, or because he sucks so bad at management? And nobody wants to point that finger back at themselves. I don't. But when I did in the beginning, and I started going, okay, all right, something's off here. We're terrible, because we fed hay in the middle of summer. That was one of the that should have been the answer to your question earlier, when we were feeding hay in the middle of August because God wouldn't send the rain, right? It's got to be somebody else's fault. It's always, in our culture, someone else's fault. And when I decided to draw the line there for myself and go, you know what, damn it, is no one else's fault, and I'm going to change this right now for myself, for my future generations, and for anybody else who wants to jump on board or be a friend or just talk about it, we can all move in that direction away from this death, right? And so it's heartbreaking to hear that. That dude's 75 years old. What? You're so damn stuck in your ways and stubborn that you just lost your ass, sold your herd, and he still was giving me shit about not spraying my weeds down in the bottom. And I'm like, I did not tell him this, but you want to go, dude, guess what I didn't do this year? I didn't sell my herd. I actually bought some more cows, okay? I actually did well this year, in a drought. I sold some in the beginning, yes, Early on, we sold like 10 head to the sale barn, just old cows we needed to get rid of. And then later on, we sold a couple, like 5 quality pairs to somebody who wanted to start their own farm. And we slowly got rid of a few numbers. And then in the middle of the drought, I bought more cows not because I wanted to. It was a little bit of a stress. I did want to. It was an opportunity where these people were getting out of their operation. They're late 60s, I think, and they were getting out, and they do some things very similar to me, most of it, and they've been doing it a lot longer. So it was a very valuable cow herd that if I passed up, there's not many more like it, right?
Yeah.
I can't go buy these cows at the sale barn. So I bit the bullet and bought a few there. And you just want to look these people in the eyes and go like, you want to shake them a little and go like, are you so prideful that you can't be wrong? The only reason I'm so good at what I do is because I know I'm wrong most of the time.
You're willing to admit that.
Yeah. That's how y'all are successful. You were wrong before, and you figured out how to be right, or to figure out who was right, and to move in a direction of going, okay, well, I got that wrong. Chances are I'm getting a bunch of other stuff wrong. Let's move in a countercultural direction instead of in the same ending up in the doctor's office like everybody else.
Totally.
Right?
One of the things that we've talked about that you just reminded me of before we hit record is how, you're young for ranching standards. You're 30 years old. And I'm just curious, do you come across other younger ranchers that are incorporating similar practices in a way that gives you hope that like, hey, maybe we can push this tide forward and really have that change that you're looking for?
That's pretty much all who's doing it.
Yeah, younger people.
Yeah. Not all. I hate to throw out percentages because I have no idea, right? It's just what I see. But a lot of the people, the majority of the people who I talk to are the older generation. And then a lot of the people who I talk to who are moving away from that are the younger generation. Problem is they don't really have the land or the capital and all that. So they're very willing and very passionate, similar to me. But unless if they've got some family that's got generations of this, and even then, they've got their own fight on their hands. So it seems like there's changing. There's quite a few people putting out content that they have begun to change. They've just put up one hot wire just to show their family, hey, like, let's just move them once a month. And that's how we started out. We started moving just a little bit. My grandpa actually pioneered this. He got about 4 or 5 paddocks set up on a little 30-acre place back, I don't know, decades ago, back when I was a kid. And so there was a way to start out that I could just open a gate and shut it. It was like 5 acres here on each little plot. So I'd give them like 1 week on it, and then I'd open the gate, move them to the next. And oh my God, we have the same amount of cows on this, and we have 3 times the grass. What is going on? So when you start to recognize the stuff for yourself, it's just like any other life experience. That's when things start to change.
So you mentioned your grandparents, and I'm really curious about this because I think farming is such a legacy business. Do you think about sort of like what your grandparents and how their role was in your life and kind of like appreciating this style of life, but then also how your legacy will be received to future generations of other farmers and your own family?
100%. The biggest thing that we've lost, I think, as a culture is we've started thinking too short term. We really need to plan for 100 years down the road and more. But 100 years down the road, we've got several generations. When we're focused on the bottom line only, that's why we're in the boat we're in, right? Like, well, just got to get my cows through this winter. No, asshole, what about your kids and your kids' kids? Well, the kids moved off. They don't want the land anymore, right? We are so disconnected. So, yes, reconnect, but without getting into another rant to answer specifically. So my grandma was innately connected to the land. She was poor, like monetarily, and was completely dependent on the soil for life. She had like 8 or 9 brothers, and they lived, hour or 2 away from here in just a tiny little town. And I remember my grandpa would always tell me a story of when he went over there one time, kind of a little date, and they went out back and butchered one of the chickens for him, and they all ate a family dinner. And Dad tells me all the time about, Grandma and Grandpa cooking when he was a kid. He's like, there's 4 boys. He said, oh, buddy, there was not much meat to go around, and there was a fight for it. And if you're late to dinner, you only got the cornbread, right, and the beans. And so, our family has come a long ways, and we're seeing this wealth in lots of families and lots of generations being like compounded. But what I've seen is that there's one, or it's got to start with one person, but it's got to continue on with people too. And so I saw it kind of with my grandpa. He started out very young, lost his dad at a very young age. Gosh, I don't know if he's 8 or 10 or what. Very young, became a man very quick, right? He was always bragging to me about how he had land and money and all this, and he'd give me shit about, like, I'm in my 20s and he'd tell me, you don't, I mean, he taught me a lot of lessons that were hard lessons, but I'm like, man, like, I'm just over here trying to help you out, and you're just like letting me have it. He's like, yeah, I came up in a different time than you. So, man, I respect him so much. What I took from my grandma the most would be the respect and the love and the passion. She was more of a workhorse than my grandpa. I mean, they cleared that 30-acre place I was talking about.
Yes.
They cleared it by hand, mostly my grandma, and maybe a couple other hands that helped at some point, right? But her out there by hand, I mean, clearing brush that you can't walk through, trees, right? She was made of something special, I miss that about people. When you talk to these older generations, like the guy who sold off half his cattle, it's like it breaks my heart because he was made of something else. He's the same age as my grandma, right? And he's gone off the rail somewhere. Like, I don't know how we all get off so far off the path, but when we focus only on that bottom line, we become disconnected from our family, the land, and future generations, and we cause so much crap that doesn't need to be a part of this world, and we're causing it day by day. It's every choice, more life or more death, every choice. And so that's a little about my grandma. My grandpa, he used to call the place Rancho Starvo, right?
Rancho Starvo.
Yeah, Rancho Starvo. He was very focused on the bottom line. So his take on it was a little bit different because he grew up poor too, right? And he's going, well, we need to make some money, damn it. So I'm going to put as many cows out here on this piece of property I can and max it out completely, like a lot of people here do. And if they throw me a calf every single year, I don't care how skinny they are, as long as they stayed alive and they made me some money, baby. So looking at that, it's like, oh, damn, dude, you went way off the rails.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the same place that had the thistles that had taken over. It took a while to get the soil to jump back to life. But it's possible, and in a very short amount of time, considering how long it took to degrade it. So if you take lessons from every side, and then you have my dad who has worked hard his whole life. Him and my mom, so they have bought this whole place, this ranch that you're seeing, this house you're in. Man, that's where the legacy comes in, and that's where you can't do this alone. I mentioned earlier about people trying to just get in on this, and it's a lot easier for people with family who have been connected to the land and who have cows and are already somewhat there with the mindset because they want it. We all want it. We've just shoved it down in here, and we don't know we do. And so they've done that, and they've passed on the care for the land to me, which is a huge responsibility, right? You either get to go more down Rancho Starvo route, or you get to go down more life. And so choosing the more life route also means that you get humbled over and over again, knowing that you have it in you to be able to choose the route of death, and you also are wrong most of the time.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned the concept of death a few times, and that was how we had initially been really impressed by you. The first time we'd heard you speak was at the What Good Shall I Do conference. You were on a regenerative ag panel with a number of different ranchers, and you just very directly spoke to the concept of death and how often you encounter it on the ranch, which we thought was really interesting, being conscious consumers, not being ranchers, because that's a huge part of the meat eating process that we don't want to talk about because there's like a morality associated with it. There's emotions, there's animals. So I would love to just dig into that with you because we were really blown away by your perspective on it.
Okay. So where we want to start? Just death?
Just how often? I would say how often are you encountering death out here? Kind of what does that look like, and just the behind the scenes perspective that a consumer might not necessarily know with the beef that they're picking up in the supermarket.
Right. Well, to start, every single piece of meat you ever took, right? It was death. So we need to teach our kids that early and not late, so that way we don't have people at the farmer's market who are going, Austin, I need a ribeye every single week. And you're going, well, there's only like 15 to 20 on a cow, okay? Or on a steer. So they're out. And we've got to learn to eat the rest of the tough stuff, right? So when we get more connected with it, it gets better. But let's go with the harder side of things first. So goats, great example. We'll go with that because I've probably lost more goats than I have any other animal. Yeah, for sure. So, man, all right, we'll touch both of these things. We've also put this on ourselves. We can have more life and less death if we take care of things well. But the way that we've done in agriculture, in my sect of things, is we've done a really good job of making all the animals weak. And so we've got to prop them up with all these other things to keep them alive, whereas we could just have a whole lot more healthy animals that don't have to go to slaughter, right? Like we all want more cows because they produce babies. We want less steers because you only need a few bulls, right? And then you're just dealing with a bunch of assholes who only want one thing. So with the goats, we started out and started down this route of like, okay, let's get off all this stuff. Well, we would have piles of dead goats. It was ridiculous. We would walk out there and I'd have, they would get this thing where somehow the parasites affected their nervous system, and they would, I don't know if it like went into their brain or what, but they would turn their head and cock it, and it would basically, their head would be touching back to their ribs, and they would just spin circles. It was not a pretty thing to see of an animal that yesterday you loved, were petting on, and the next day you go out there and you see that, or you see them laying on the ground, can't get up, and when you do pick them up, their head goes back like someone's forcing it, right? They ain't going to make it. And so, you've got to put animals down, right? So you can give them medicine. In the beginning, we tried. And once they get to that point, I'm talking, I lost 99.9%. I may have saved a few. I'd take them to the vet. The vets would tell me, same thing over and over, don't raise goats here, man. It's too wet. Don't raise goats and sheep here. They weren't a lot of help. So it goes back to management to be able to have healthier animals. We've talked a lot about that. But what do you do with that animal that now is suffering? Okay, there are animals that get sick here that don't get back up, even with all the good we are doing, which I think it's good management. I know it is. The animals are healthier. The land is. We still get animals that come out weak out of the womb. Why exactly? It's probably somewhere I'm lacking in management. And it's also, we live in a world that has death in it. So when you have to go out there and put that animal down, nobody wants to do that. So when you become the farmer or the rancher and you have these animals, you are responsible now for their life. So you go out there and you put it down. It has life 1 minute. The next minute it is kicking and convulsing, and its life is leaving its body after you put a bullet in it. And you're just going, it'll make you question every single thing about yourself. You feel terrible. 1, you failed. 2, you just had to kill it. And then 3, you're watching its soul, I don't know exactly there. You're watching its life leave its body. And it is not a pretty sight, right? It's not just, you shot it and it's over. All its nerves and everything, its life force is going and moving. And I don't care if you put 5 in it. I don't care where you shoot it. Sometimes they drop, very rarely. Or is it just over like that? So that's one. Thank a rancher, because they're putting up with shit that you don't have to. I didn't grow up in the city, but I can just imagine how far disconnected you would be and just go, oh man, well, like, even if you love a hamburger and you know it comes from a cow, you had no idea how many sick animals that guy just struggled with and stayed up with all night, and then still 5 days later, after he gave every medicine the vet told him to, just to try to get the animal healthy, still dies, right? So we are in a broken world. and we're trying to make it better. We're trying to, one way to put it would be bring heaven here, right? We're trying to make this place more like paradise, and it's friggin' hard. The wilderness wants to take us over. We see that whenever we don't manage a field well. The wilderness, the forest just starts to consume it from the outside edges in, and even from within the middle, trees start popping up. And so we have this great responsibility as humans. We're not just chickens. We're not just, goats might argue with you, but they have a little bit more of a say. But we're not just cows and sheep. We're not just focused on just eating grass and surviving on to the next day. We have this responsibility to care for everything. That's what we are, as caretakers. And so if we're going to have to eat something, what's the best way to do it? Well, some would argue it's veganism, which I would not argue that. But think about how many animals have to die for that crop. We could go off into that. We're not, but hundreds of animals, hundreds upon hundreds, are dying for each crop that was harvested on one particular place, because that rabbit's eating it, that coyote's getting out there, the deer, anything that's taking part of that crop, right? They're trying to harvest the crop, so they're getting rid of them like they're all rodents. So that can't be it, because now we're just killing for no reason. So we get to animal agriculture, and we have the feedlots and everything. That's not working. That's disgusting. We don't want that. We don't want animals in confinement. So now we have the small rancher, the guy with 5 acres or several hundred or big ranches that are on rangeland that are massive. We are now responsible for those animals. They're not just wild anymore. So yes, we've got to keep them healthy. If they are healthy, then what? At some point, they've lived the best life they possibly can. I believe my animals are getting the best life that anybody can offer them. And I don't really like to sell to anybody unless if I know they are about to just give them, at least try to give them what I've given them, and take care of them well. And then on top of that, not turn them into a baby again. Because while we're having this good nature, we are also going to put bows on them, and we see all kinds of crap on Instagram about, well, here's, Jolene, the little lamb, and you're like, thanks, you just ruined all of her future generations. Now we've got a baby every single one of them, right? And so we have a lot of animals that you want to be strong, and they can't handle it in nature, because for the past 3-4 generations, we've done nothing but make babies out of them. So anyways, we have a strong animal, and we raise it, and we do it right. Many people say it has a great life and it has one bad day, right? So that one bad day, I think that everyone should be a part of that one bad day, because it's not. It's a very good day. It's a day where you take the life of something else and it feeds your family and it feeds many other families. But now we've hit our heads in the sand just like an ostrich or something, right? You got that picture where we're just, please don't tell me, don't show me. Okay, here's the steak. All right, we're good to go. Let's eat, guys. We need to be intimately connected with it taking another being's life for us to survive, because we ain't going to make it on the grass. We're not very good at taking the sunlight and converting it like photosynthesis, right? We are good at eating animals, and we're good at taking care of animals. So if anybody listening wants to take part in that, we offer whole lambs that we do put down in the field, and you can be a part of that here. The problem is now you've got this carcass on your hands that nobody really wants to be a part of. So I don't offer the processing after that. I want people to be uncomfortable with, what do I do with this dead body? And I don't make a lot of sales that way. I sell plenty of live animals or plenty of prepackaged animals. I barely sell any. Like y'all mentioned Taylor at Rome Ranch, they do a whole deal where they put the bison down in the field. It's called field harvest, and then they help you cut it up and all that. So you're actually like hands-on. They're a lot smarter than me. I like to do the hard way of, inviting people into something they really want no part of. And so we've sold a few, but you put them down in the field with their family. Where else would you want to go? I would want to go right there with my family while I'm having a great day, eating grass. We're all having a picnic out there. And you put that animal down, everyone else doesn't run off. It's weird. They stand around, and they will go up and check on the animal and all that. And there's a moment of reverence that the animals take part in. I don't see any tears go from their eyes, right? Like now you rip a baby from his mama, you know, there's a fight, but you just take one of the animals out of the herd and they know they're still alive. They know that they're there to go on for future generations, to pass that on. And I think we could really learn from that, because whenever I first started all this ranching, oh my God, death was the hardest thing. I mean, I was so mad. Like, I was mad at the world. I was mad at myself. I was mad at God. Why do we have to be a part of this? There's not an easy answer. The answer is it takes death for us to live, and that is the world we live in. And at some point, all of us are going back into the soil that we came out of. So we may as well face it head on and be a part of it, just like nature is a part of it. Nature's way is being everything being interconnected, and we're caretakers of everything being connected. And we've decided, no, let's remove everything and put it in its separate parts and put it in a building and this building and this building, and then get it to the person where there is no possible way that they would even think about this having life before they got their little red ground up package. Well, we see where it's gotten us. Why do any of us want to be a part of that? So we need to nut up and go be a part of something that's really, really hard, which is death. But death is life.
Yeah, and that's some seriously moving thinking that is really centered around this idea that we've kind of just outsourced discomfort to other people or machines, or just for the convenience factor of being able to not actually address these things that create life. It's like very interesting to me that there's or not surprising to me that there are so many people who are struggling now, or having health problems or having mental health problems, because it almost feels like we've outsourced like this connection. And we almost, I think you touched on that a bit in your counterculture's mission statement. It's like reconnect and have this like sharedness, and we don't avoid the important aspects of it.